Okay, getting back into the swing of things with the cultural shift that seems to be going on right now. We'll see how it ends in the long run, but my focus is going on back to some things from a while ago. So let's get started with a little bit of Pax Tube. Let me give someone at least another video, some context for all of this shit before I get into what I noticed many years ago.
The subject of this video is a YouTuber called Pax Tube, whose video repertoire includes analysis of how deep the Giga Chad meme is, trying to convince people Attack on Titan is about Marxism, and how apparently the Crusades were pretty cool, according to him. On March 24th, Pax Tube decided to join the proud tradition of creators who have discovered that you've all been lied to. Every historian was wrong. They found the truth, and they're going to show you how, all in a 15-minute YouTube video.
In this video, you'll be finding out why the Crusades were not only morally justified, but were actually a historic achievement. Buckle up, because there's a lot to cover.
This video is not just about Pax Tube. My intent here is to use the misconceptions and outright lies fronted by Pax Tube as a jumping off point to teach you some interesting aspects of the Crusades that you may not have heard of, and point you in the direction of literature that might be conducive to further learning. I first heard of Pax Tube when I saw my friends making fun of him on Twitter because he was freaking out over allegations that his favorite underage presenting VTuber may have had sex before, and that even more shocking to him, she may have dated a black man. This is a deeply unserious individual. Pax Tube is a special kind of online LARPer called a tradcath, or a traditional Catholic. They're not actually traditional Catholics by any meaning of the word, instead adopting some weird reimagined return LARP aesthetic based on cherry-picked aspects of Catholicism that they think are neat. Because these tradcaths are usually terminally online young men who, unlike many of their great heroes, did not choose their celibacy, they tend to gravitate towards power fantasies emerging from distorted and often.
Why all of this may be true and is a good theory, at least in theory, this does seem to be an interesting insight from a channel that seems to be primarily focused on debunking the bullshit out there about history. Okay, not debunking, just some response to what if alt history. But a little bit of the Pax Tube crap spun into that particular thing. So it's an interesting sort of rabbit hole to go down, and this is just a very talent. Okay, Pax Tube came onto my radar more within the sort of spear out of things with yeah, I was trying to load something up real quick and it ain't working out for me. So, as Pax Tube, it was the edge runner sort of thing where he tried to edge himself into sort of the anime space, which I was more at the time. And I encountered a couple of interesting things when encountering him. One is another response to his VTuber, the dark side of VTubes, which is quite interesting, which I'll get into a bit. Ola there, just going over Pax Tube, the dark side of Pax Tube, and quite an interesting response within that. Whoops.
Nothing but positive interactions with the guy. And on the off chance that you're listening to this, Pax, I enjoy.
I find the intro interesting. He doesn't want this to be seen as an attack.
Your work and want to see you improve. Consequently, I'm not going to hold any punches with this response. Hope you enjoy.
Too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. And in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse.
Pax Tube's The Dark Side of VTubers is the definition of speaking for hours and saying absolutely nothing. With a runtime of nearly 20 minutes, it takes until somewhere around the 11:30 mark for the essay to actually start delving into what makes virtual YouTubers so darn heinous. Even once the video does reach this point, the substance of the expose is lackluster, to say the least. Until then, we're treated with quite an agreeable deluge of regurgitated information that most of the audience will already know. One can thus walk away from the presentation under the grand delusion that they've just learned something valuable or profound, when the reality is much more shallow. Overall, the endeavor is disappointing at best and absurdly careless, half-hearted, and melodramatic at worst, glossing over substantial points of contention that one could have with the VTuber phenomenon, while simultaneously lingering on meaningless drivel like boob physics and tasteless sexual humor. What I'm saying is that there are legitimate gripes that you can have about the VTuber community and the genre as a whole, but Pax Tube isn't touching on them here, not even close. Pax opens his documentary with an 11-minute preamble on the dangers of parasocial relationships and the rising popularity of VTubers, the social climate of today, and how such factors have fostered the growth of the VTubers' target demographic of young, single male consumers. A decent foundation despite its dry, lengthy, and generally unsurprising content. I'm not here to knock the basis of the
Yep, I could agree with that. The parasocial relationships out there does seem to be a concern. Another reason I sort of took a break from all this, considering all the sort of factors that thing come into play.
of this critique. Just outline it so that we all understand where we're going with this. If you feel like I'm glossing over anything of importance, I encourage you to watch the entire product on your own. For the sake of brevity, I won't be covering everything, only the important bits. So we've laid the groundwork that men are single, lonely, and desperate for attention. Artificial relationships handcrafted by corporations designed to squeeze every monetary drop out of the general public are bound to prey upon such folks, which they most certainly do. Depending on your viewpoint, you might not find such...
Okay, that's a good primer for the sort of stuff. And this guy, Richard Weasel, not a really big guy, but he does have an interesting thing within his repartee, I guess, a debate with Eric July, which it seems like Eric July debated everyone. Okay, Pax Tube, yeah, debating Eric July. Libertarianism versus
is it must
ethno-nationalism, I believe, if it was that particular thing there. The JQ there. This guy, I think this is a very, if that's not Shadman art there, it's definitely inspired. So there's different perspectives on this particular matter here. So now let's really get into the brass tacks with this. I know I like to say a lot of crap like that, but good enough intro to the sort of responses from people to Pax Tube. Let's take a look at actual Pax Tube's channel. As soon as I get back into the swing of things and I can figure that all out. So
The subject of this video is a YouTuber
practice with this.
whose video-
So Pax Tube, here's the one I want to look at, not the one I originally sort of responded to, not that greatly. The sort of edge runners thing, the sort of hint of nihilism that he put in his video, which maybe I should take another look at beforehand to sort of point out some of the points that he brought up. Edge Runners is just an adaptation on the sort of tragedy of the old Romeo and Juliet. Was that nihilistic in nature? I wonder how he would respond to those particular claims there. But yeah, how does hentai destroy your mind? Which is a sort of preamble to how porn destroys your mind overall. The video in question is not actually going to be what I covered, okay? There is some legitimate concerns with the addiction of online pornographic material that sort of gets addictive, but it goes for a lot of things. When I originally researched this, I found quite an interesting thing. His citations have quite a few things. One of them I found very more interest in his actual thing. This website here, Fight the New Drug, true story of how hentai porn and chat room twisted my sex life. And this might be a real account. You got a trigger warning right there. Traditional Catholic video essayist gets into this stuff, and I don't know why something just dropped. So I said, getting back into the swing of things, I guess I stopped that. So, Find the New Drug. True story of how hentai, I'm not questioning it, a sheltered daughter. From this, you got the trigger warning here. Okay, so all of this is really immaterial. What I want to focus is on is some of the sources that someone like Pax Tube sort of brings up to sort of come across. So, Fight the New Drug, still around, activist firm. Okay. Activist sort of a site here. Looks legit. I'm not questioning that there's probably bad outcomes coming from any of this stuff here. And maybe I will let him speak for himself while I look up a couple of things about his personal material. So, yep, that's where I fucked up earlier.
Modern internet are as destructive. That's not an exaggeration. We live in a time where the average person takes it for granted that porn and hentai don't harm them, when in reality, all scientific research shows they do. So how did we get here, and what can be done about it?
The scientific research more treats it as if it's addictive in nature, and it can be harmful to relationships, and it can be used in negative ways to sort of go over certain things. That's what actual scientific data. Why, after his porn video, did he do this? Because he tried to edge his way into the anime community. Why took an interest in him originally?
Anime is the definition of a medium with big ups and big downs.
And why you're trying to use it.
It can be a beautiful art style that produces brilliant shows. There are thousands of anime fans who enjoy their favorite anime without making it weird. Anime can produce many meaningful discussions about themes and messages. But just as the culture surrounding anime has its highs, it has its dark lows. Hentai is the darkest of them all. In 2020, I made a video titled How Pornography Destroys Your Mind. Everything I said in that video is as true today as it was then. In fact, since I made that video, even more research on the negative effects of pornography has come out. The mountain of proof continues to grow ever higher, and there's no end in sight. First of all, for people not acquainted with what hentai means, here's its definition. Hentai is a work of anime or manga, or any similar medium, that contains sexual...
Okay, how does this really relate? He's sort of leading the heart.
Of it. However, despite this, there remains a vocal minority who seem to think that somehow hentai doesn't have the same negative effects as real porn. They've convinced themselves that because hentai is drawn, masturbating to it will somehow have no effect on them. Not only is this false, but I'll be making the case in this video that hentai is probably even worse for you than actual pornography. A bold claim, but give me the chance to make my case. And now, with the stage all set, let's get into exactly how hentai destroys your mind.
2 minutes in. Interesting. Preamble.
To the average person, hentai probably doesn't sound like it's an issue outside of Japan. But in the last 2 decades, that's all changed. Hentai websites generate tens of millions of views from people across the planet, not just Asia. Pornhub, the biggest porn site in the world, released a report in 2019 that found that hentai was its most searched category. Any online anime fan has heard of someone who's watched hentai. Hentai websites are widely shared anywhere anime is discussed. Hentai may have started in Japan, but in a way it's also not truly Japanese. 45. Japan enforced strict censorship laws that forbid...
I don't know how any of this is immaterial to how hentai destroys your mind. Okay, gonna quit. I'm gonna take the shift away from this real quick so I can actually get back onto, because I looked up the sort of fighting the new drug stuff. Quite riveting material when I looked into it years ago. I would rather have it on hand for this particular case here. Okay, Find the New Drug is a nonprofit, secular, non-legislative, anti-porn organization based in Utah. Okay, we go through all this. Love kills, porn kills love. There's a lot of material in here that I don't really want to go into. It's more the criticism. And I did look into this, and it does seem to be a missing the mark. The criticism holding a openly idealistic driven strategy in the group's message, in particular in categorization of porn as a drug as a pseudoscience, contradicts the neuroscience research. Always look at this particular matter here when using Wikipedia as a source. Okay, so I'll get to this. Well, that's just going to lead to a link. Wikipedia is a good starter for this particular stuff. Welcome something awful. Okay, just getting back into it. Did this research a while ago about Pax Tube. So Find the New Drug definitely seems to be a very Mormon-based thing from everything I read out there. So he's using these sort of citations that sort of goes against, yeah. The group has alleged to be an example of continued influence by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints over social issues. An example of them using billboards in San Francisco intentionally to target socially progressive regions. So basically, more religious people adopting sort of progressive sort of tactics to sort of, yes, porn is addiction. A lot of things are addiction in reality. Okay. And this video is just sort of the same sort of video essay as Fluff the Left has, but you have the trad cad sort of doing that. You can see a little bit of that in Nick Fuentes, I believe, in general. So it's a little hard to actually deal with this particular matter at hand. So I'm just getting back into it. So this isn't really the video that I want to go over. It's more Pax Tube in general, which seems to be interesting. He seems to have shifted from going into using anime as a cudgel to sort of sorry, I'm getting distracted by music outside. Seems like people are celebrating something strange. Whole bunch of vets. Let me not get into that. Okay. Catholic social critic who creates video essays on important subjects of our time. Research history, culture, and modern world. Fact-based, non-partisan. Okay. It's an important thing. It's a very interesting thing. I don't know how well all these new videos have sort of come along. As I said, there's some responses. One from a channel that seems to be primarily focused on history, which is not my particular matter. You've seen him on Twitter. I haven't seen him a lot. But yeah, this is an example of right social justice warriors. Okay. Seems to be a couple of them cropping up using social issues. It's not necessarily a bad thing in general. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. This guy.
A Western anime? A Western anime brought to us by Netflix? What could go wrong? Remember the last Western anime I looked at?
You're a girl.
My mic went off. Okay. Probably got some success from his sort of crappy ass. Well, I didn't actually watch his High Guardian Spice video because High Guardian Spice was trash from a whole bunch of different levels.
Girl? I'm transgender.
Cyberpunk Edgerunners is a new American anime that, from what I've seen, has gotten good reviews and been very popular. Being an anime and being made by a company infamous for its degenerate propaganda, it's right in my ballpark to critique. The anime has many flaws, which I'll be going over in detail, but it also deals with some serious themes worthy of looking at. Nihilism, transhumanism, dystopia, all of these will be discussed. Edgerunners also provides a great opportunity to point out the problem with modern animation for adults as a whole.
See a different medium in general, trying to slip that in. Okay. I found this video interesting. My video on it was rather craptastic. For the whole nihilism thing, is tragedy nihilism? Let me just highlight some of his sort of weird sort of points in here.
To our own today. Really, if you just took away the technology, the city is just modern-day Los Angeles. I'll note right out of the gate that while we're shown that
and not that bad, but it's comparable probably. So you're taking a piece of fiction and you're sort of working with it. You're trying to sort of take popular media. Yeah, here we get into it.
Isn't it being explored? The obvious explanation here is that being an infamously anti-Christian company, Netflix didn't want to have an actively Christian main character. Can't have that, especially in a nihilistic.
Yeah, like Trigger or CD Projekt Red, or should I say Trigger, who actually produced this anime and even rejected some of the notes CD Projekt Red sort of gave them. The whole lowly concern, which I understand how that concern comes into play.
Show. This, of course, begs the question of why they even included this necklace. Christianity isn't a look, it's a religion. So as the show goes on, we see more and more aspects.
He seems rather offended that the Japanese likes to use Christianity as aesthetic. Neon Genesis Evangelion goes with the whole lore, okay? Some faith-based, okay, ideas out there. Probably shouldn't even go over this whole video, but let me take another crack at it.
One positive of Edgerunner's depiction of dystopia is that it shows some things we actually would see in a dystopia. Homeless people on the streets are strapped with self-masturbating machines, and VR porn is shown as widespread. People waste their lives away in VR fantasy worlds as they get plundered by the society's most powerful. Transhumanism is common and used by many people. Sexual liberation is shown as the political tool for control that it is. I, for one, would have liked to have seen this explored even more. Yes, tell us more about how a corrupt ruling class uses sexual degeneracy to weaken and demoralize the population. Alas, we don't get that. And actually, Edgerunners itself engages in the exact over-sexualization it criticizes here. More about that later. Another accurate dystopia.
That's the thing, it doesn't actually criticize it. There's a lot of ideas within this that seems contradictory within this video. And even as poorly as I did it, Edgerunners is just an adaptation off of Romeo and Juliet. It's a tragedy, okay? Yeah, it's a dystopian sort of fantasy like anything else. At least it's not The Handmaid's Tale or anything out there like that. But in the end, when it comes to all this fun
or his
stuff...
education. Unlike Batman, who dedicated his life to fighting criminals after his parents were killed by senseless crime, David decides to turn to a life of crime. Instead of hating the kind of criminals that killed his mom, he joins them. He then even goes on to kill...
So David is bad because he's not Batman. A lot of people aren't Batman. Batman isn't always Batman.
Innocent people who are just like his mom later in the show. He suits himself up with cyborg technology and joins a group of Edgerunners, which are basically criminal mercenaries. From here on out, all of the show's protagonists are criminals. And not sympathetic criminals either. Some of these are very bad people who have no problem with murder or theft if it benefits them financially. It would be one thing if they were only criminals because they were fighting the tyrannical corporations that rule society, but it's not even that. In some cases, they actually work for the megacorps. Some of what they do through the show, in terms of heartless killings, are actually very messed up. Now, one issue I have is that David didn't have to become an outlaw. Even though he was poor, he was still a healthy young man and probably could have found honest work. Through David, the show presents it as common sense that someone with a hard life will resort to crime, but that's just not true. And ironically, this idea that poverty justifies crime is itself something that perpetuates the crime-poverty cycle. The chaos...
Okay, enough of that. This video did not age well. In the end of the day, all of this crap is just another video essayist at its early stages. This is why I like to look at smaller channels sometime to sort of see where this is going. This is where Pax Tube was the first time I really noticed it. Sort of rightoids coming in. I'm sure there's more sophisticated people who's sort of taken up the mantle of social justice from these particular individuals out there. But that's besides the point. The sort of looking at Pax Tube as a case study is, I think, worth doing in a certain regard. But he's sort of like Andy Pants. He's just so over the top. It's hard to believe he's not parody. Like the one guy Freddie sort of pointed out. Let's not Freddie finger this. So where do we go from here? Okay. How has the sort of cultural shift, at least on YouTube, which is my prime concern, sort of shifted over time? I'm going to actually have to blame commentary on this. And this sort of commentary thing, hola. Commentaries to blame. Going back another 3 years when this sort of cultural shift sort of took part. Hola, Romeo. So the cultural shift, and let's blame this guy here. Let's blame these two guys here for this. Just a small example, and don't take too much from it. Half-Baked Podcast.
Know how far people kind of take that nowadays, right? Where like if you go in like one direction, then you're like, completely for like riots and shit. I mean, I'm pro.
Oh, yeah. I should give context to this. They had Xanderhal on this episode, which is going to come up in a little bit for this quick stream of mine. Because he's sort of taken up the mantle, even though he has his own freak out moments. But for some reason, they had him on the Half-Baked Podcast, Turkey Tom, Nicholas D'Oreo, Double Stuff Oreo, and Vega, editor for the Catch 22 podcast. And now Turkey Tom is sort of highlighting his sort of political beliefs to Xanderhal, at least.
Oh, like, like people's rights, as long as they're not hurting anyone, gay rights, trans rights, whatever. I don't care. You can hear me say trans rights for the first time on the podcast ever.
Historical event.
Sure. As far as economics, as far as economics, I really don't know. Probably like pro-capitalism for the most part. I would say that if we had to go on the streamer political compass, I would put myself probably closer to a Destiny than a Bosch. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, unironically, I think that's agreeable enough. Like, believe it or not, and I used to be very different from this. I used to be like a really hardcore, I would say really hardcore purist, but my rhetoric was really bad. And I had a very unrealistic view of how to change people's minds or the kind of relationships you should have with people. And so if you looked at like early...
Okay, highlighting this, a particular instance, he sort of criticized people. I thought I had a bit of a comment here, but I guess I missed out. I think this is the infamous podcast where Xanderhal was sort of trying to get into commentary a little bit. That seems to be where this quote is taken from here in general. So, as for this, Half-Baked, Xanderhal comes in, and now we get a little bit of other cringe out there. So you have this sort of commentary getting interesting. Everyone who's been in commentary recently probably knows how Chud Logic got into the community with the drama baiters. So the drama baiters got in. He got in with the drama baiters, Chud Logic, who is from the old panel scene. Definitely from the political scene overall. And let me play this some while I take a drink. Yeah, you're going to have to listen to a little bit more Xanderhal. Sorry in advance, okay? I'll try to avoid it.
Well, I would have been Pig Puncher back then, like 2019 political me. I would have been like, you don't believe this, this, and this. I don't know. We're going to have to get into a big argument. But like if somebody agrees with some basic, like general ideas, then I'm completely fine being cool with them. It's not going to bother me.
Yeah.
Wait, I have to ask. I'm totally pulling us completely off the path we were setting in the beginning, but like, how did you go from someone who you would say you're pretty far right to being Pig Puncher that quickly?
Well, I was Pig Puncher back when I was like pretty far right.
Really?
Yeah, I guess a lot of people, like if you watch my video where I tell my story about my political journey, obviously the video is like 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, I can't remember. So it feels like it was a very short amount of time that passed, but it was actually a pretty long time. Like it's not something that happens overnight. Like going from being like sort of a milquetoast lib, like I was raised as, and then kind of going to the far right. This was something that happened over the course of like 8 months. And then me going from like discovering some of Destiny's debates and some more left-leaning content and left-leaning arguments that I...
And then he sort of took a weird direction after this. Okay. Hell, the whole Lauren Southern, getting her on to talk about her book, then trying to talk about her whole Great Replacement was quite oof from Xanderhal. He's also had the girlfriend who sort of took all his money and sold it for drugs, and there was that whole drama. Let me not get too far off topic.
That's like a cool superhero backstory for your channel.
Oh yeah, I wish I had like an actually cool superhero backstory. There are people that I know who literally grew up in like an actual like far right cult. That's the cool superhero backstory. But
what do you mean, like a far right cult? Like they were in like Atomwaffen or like what?
Or not nothing like Atomwaffen, but like a hardcore far right Christian like cult type thing. Yeah.
To be honest, that just sounds like the South or something. Like
it is a bit like the South.
Christian.
I think they lived in like Kentucky or something, like backwoods Kentucky.
I see.
What do you think about what do you think about all these bigger political people who have made like extreme shifts with beliefs and everything like that? Like these people have like huge platforms, they preach X, Y, and Z opinions for like 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden they're just completely flip-flop. Do you think that's like admirable? As somebody who's been on the other side of the political spectrum, could you imagine if you had like a massive platform and then you kind of made that decision to...
I guess it depends. Like, are there, not to call out anyone in particular, but do you have any examples that I could go off of?
I guess one question I would have would be someone who's been talked about a lot recently in kind of that sort of vein, and really in the past few years, you probably know who I'm going to say, but Shoe on Head has been like a sort of point of contention for like, people saying, oh, she flip-flopping her opinions. I think we've actually talked about this
and
on the podcast.
She got into it also.
Episode.
Okay, I found what I needed to. In reality, sorry for exposing everyone who doesn't want to hear Xanderhal. Not that the sort of anti-SJW craze that's going on is exactly much better. So there's a couple things into it. Yep, and Xanderhal, flamenco. Okay. Yep, he's beefed with a lot of people over the years, Xanderhal. Okay, and he managed to make some strides, and he actually plays a part in what I want to bring up. Definitely a downstream effect from the sort of right social justice concern, which is definitely horrible. And I can't make much sense, but this one dude, a moment of sanity, has really milked this guy. Luckily, he put out a retrospective that's going to help me out a lot here. Okay, so we have Moment of Sanity up. Share that stuff. Okay, Moment of Sanity, not on screen. Now we got it. Here's a whole playlist. And I can skip ahead.
Recent Shadow Raven video, and you can understand why it had to be pushed back.
He has a couple of things. He's made a whole playlist. I think there's 15 videos in here of him milking this complete sped.
This legal action, which I guess is kind of partly why I'm making this video, to I guess kind of clarify a few things, clean up some things that have been muddied by...
And he definitely has a rapport with his audience, can get out there in personality. A lot of this intro is just filler. Moment of Sanity, retrospective, which doesn't seem to end.
That I feel like could have been done just a little bit better, and some things that need to be clarified and corrected. So Let's get started here. So obviously the first video that ended up starting this was none other than my response to his weird hit piece on the Fallout Ashfall mod. Now, of course, his constant justification for this entire video being that someone told him to make a video on this one, you know, is obviously pretty fucking terrible because, well, wouldn't you believe it, that's still not a justification for not doing the simplest of research and even knowing what the fuck Turbo Squid is. But of course, what made this even funnier is that as this situation kept on going on, I ended up finding out that not only was it
Yep, leftist, leftoid insurrections. Okay. Anyone familiar with Pillar Garbage should actually take a look at his video on As. You can dislike it, disagree. I think it's rhetorically effective, but that's another matter altogether.
just a Turbo Squid asset, but the submarine that was showing off in said Turbo Squid screenshot wasn't even the actual, like, you know, submarine from that guy. In fact, I could probably just show off the original one if I can still find it. I'd have to try and dig through, like, if I do find it, I'll put it up on screen. This is the original submarine. I don't know why I haven't shown it off earlier.
Okay, this is a horrible video. All this was a bad idea. Let me just go to his little playlist so you can sort of highlight who he's milked, the sort of milkers of the community. And they seem to be coming up from the sort of commentary community, okay? 18 videos, and I think some of them are private, okay? This one is the better way, is the better version. And oh, look, Overlord. They got a movie. Good for them. Okay, this is a better way. Celeste gameplay.
Is that they aren't a parody, at least according to them, because they have Jared Leto Tell Yellow. Yeah, apparently. And dear God, this individual is just... I'm surprised that they aren't a parody, at least according to them, because they have Jared Leto's Joker as their fucking profile picture. But yeah, I ended up finding this video on this idiot's channel, and dear God, it is horrible. Like, it is spectacular how terrible this video is. So without any further ado, let us sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and let's just dive right in.
There are so many things to explore, quite literally. This video is brought to you by our sponsor, Nuka-Cola.
I am making this video by request, but there is a mysterious question going around regarding a mod called Fallout Ashfall.
There is already so much that I need to unpack here.
Yeah, still in development phase. I'd say moment of sanity. You should definitely not go with that from the first few seconds. Yes, terrible. He's showing skin. Of course it's going to be. I don't coincide on all this crap.
Woke DLC mod. To give a brief explanation of what this is, Fallout Ashfall is a DLC-sized mod for Fallout New Vegas that's being developed by a team. I'm going to warn everybody right now. There's going to be some very controversial information I'm going to be giving in this video. And in regards to the intel I received this information from, throughout the whole video, I am going to refer to him as Anonymous Tip.
Jesus fucking Christ. This man wants to LARP as a detective so fucking bad, it's already starting to remind me of a certain asshole that I defected from. Like, I'm not even joking about this shit. This is so fucking sad. Like, this man is trying to LARP as a detective.
This is the first video on his playlist, and it seems to have devolved. How much of it is true actually doesn't matter. In the end of the day, I would like to look into this a little bit. These small things, it seems a little out there.
Himself to be a transgender woman and a bisexual to me is this.
Just all of its original meaning, let's put it that way.
The first set of information Anonymous gave to me is this. The lead developer considers himself to be a transgender woman and a bisexual who has a collection of Bad Dragon sex toys. But that's not the only information he gave to me. He wanted to tell me about the submarine that they're supposed to...
That seems fair enough. The woke, the anti-woke, and the anti-woke. Yes. And people are coming out. And this guy is a special sort of anti-woke that is... No, not anti-woke, who the anti-woke definitely will use as highlight. Just like the Ackman did in his video, which the sort of woke thing, which is way out there. In his particular video, he highlighted a playlist that I hear that even some anti-woke people make fun of. It's a little bit weird, okay? The stream. This is an example of someone who totally missed the mark from the anti-woke people in general. Sort of like Andy Bands did. Just thinking you can just do whatever and go super over the edge there.
Using in Fallout Ashfall.
So obviously, potential misgendering completely aside here, we already are starting off with poisoning the fucking well here by stating, oh yeah, apparently she's a trans woman. I'm going to use she because I know that idiots like this are going to get real pissed off if I actually use the correct pronouns here. But they're basically stating, oh, the developers...
Okay, some more commentary on this particular thing. Definitely a lot of fluff within his content here. Okay, that's my personal perspective on it. He is the audience. This is his first thing. He was just trying to milk them like any other channel. Moment of sanity, folks. Okay. Don't co-sign everything they do, but I find this to be probably milking too hard on a rather stupid person. But it is a good example. The Shadow Raven Studio. Like, seriously. 18 videos, and I don't even know if they kept all of them up.
Face value, unlike this fucking moron who decided to make this video. And also, I did a little bit of digging on stream while I was watching this video, and yeah, guess what? Turbo Squid is quite literally an asset sharing platform for people to be able to purchase or even just download free models for use in any kind of project that they could use them in. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not a stolen asset. It's an asset that is literally on there for people to use freely. So try again next time.
The supposed submarine that they're supposed to be using in Fallout Ashfall was actually taken from another site. In other words, they stole this asset from another artist, is the impression that I'm getting when Anonymous gave me this important...
Like for this particular thing, the impression I got. Why not fact check and make sure of that? Why not? I mean, some people in the lower level, not going to care. They get anonymous tip, as this guy did. He just goes with it, makes a video. He's probably not going to get anywhere, especially since he deleted his channel.
Important information.
Yeah, it's real important that someone used a pre-purchased asset that they likely aren't even claiming as theirs for
Why did I choose
for a
to
fucking
watch
mod.
this video? You can watch this video on your own. A Moment of Sanity has this whole playlist. There's some things that I can agree with. Other things I'm just like, why milk this guy? Okay, it is clear that this one guy,
and this actually happened to Doc
keeping it up.
when they found out.
The point is, there is a lot of people trying to use social justice and having some sort of weird warped perception of social justice within the right movement. And there's a lot of problems. The people milk it, try to make fun of these losers, will actually, in the end, probably help them out at the end of the day. Help out the woke people or the anti-woke things. Yes. G-Coops brings up a very good point. It really just feeds into itself. And yeah, we get back into this particular thing. He goes to the retrospective to sort of go over it.
Smoother. There may have still been some hostility, but not nearly as much as there was in the first debate. I feel like the first debate definitely didn't really help things all too much. You know, looking back now, if we had actually known just what this situation would have spiraled into, would have folks were perfect memes.
Yep, I made a mistake with this. I probably made a whole mistake not planning out this whole stream in general. But my point being is there seems to be a cultural shift. And there's a little bit of that dirtbag left, I think, is coming up on Twitter or X, if you want to call it that, and YouTube videos. The more rightoids, right-leaning people, right-posing people wanted to sort of get into the sort of fighting for social justice. I say that with air quotes. Getting into the space. And, of course, the reactionary people on the left. We've seen it. Even freaking the Hackman sort of took it a reactionary stance to Andy Pants Gaming, which is such a obvious grift. Why would he not? Why would he not milk that? But they're going to miss the sort of underlining things that have been developing. Left, right, bread tubers pretty much coming onto the scene, making it like it's not political, but you can find certain sort of ideas out there that are pushing for media to become more right-leaning, okay, to enforce right ideas out there. And I'm just as against that sort of ideas as people legitimately going over media with hardcore leftist critique of it, saying what media should do and shouldn't do. Okay. In the end of the day, people have their audiences, okay? And those audiences, I don't even know what I was going with that. As I said, quick stream to get back into the flow of things. And I'm going to really need to work out this idea. Just want to put this idea out here. Have my little particular script. Why? Let me just end with my script and maybe I can function into a video. Give me a moment or not. I'll cut this off at the end of the day. Quite interesting. So let me just try to record the script. Cut it off. I'm really getting into metaphor, fantasino. And that's eating up a lot of my time. Trying to relax some. So let me end this up. PSA, stop living in fear of the dreaded leftoid SJWs. Okay, might need to work on that title, but that's besides the point. A PSA for those who haven't gotten with the times. Stop living in fear of the dreaded leftoid SJWs. I'm against what's known as cancel culture. The two best examples of that is that one chick who made that edgy joke about going to Africa. The setup for it was like, I'm worried about getting AIDS or some crap. Doing this from memory now. And then she said, why worry? I'm white. Or something like that. I'm paraphrasing from memory. Turned off her phone when she came back to social media. She came back to a social shitstorm out there. I think a more prominent and better examples is the case of James Damore or Lindsay Shepard. They both got fired pretty much for just exploring different ideas out there. James Damore, if you don't know, was asked to sort of try to get minorities or women more into Microsoft, Google, whatever. Gonna have to fact check this. And wrote up a whole memo and got fired for using a lot of data. I think he took a very autistic approach and didn't realize the sort of social ramifications around it. And Lindsay Shepard, she just got a whole bunch of shit, which led to her being fired. The shit is showing off a Jordan Peterson video, not to sort of promote that, to actually challenge her students, to challenge the actual students out there to listen to other perspectives. And she got shit. They compared her to Peterson. There's a whole sort of video where she recorded the sort of struggle session she went through. But if you don't know about those examples, I would urge you to look them up. That shit really doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, there are still small examples of things like that going on within society, but they tend to have to be rather rock solid. And when those things happen, yes, push back on those particular instances. With all that being said, why the fuck are rightoids and others who aren't really hip on the far left trying to pull that same sort of shit nowadays? And don't give me that they aren't. There are plenty of examples out there of these people engaging in what I would definitely call cancel culture. Hell, Saw a tweet today about lives a TikTok. Saw a tweet today saying that same thing. I'm doing a little ad-libbing in between this basic bear shit I'm doing. Yeah, when I bring up this shit to some people, they give me some bullshit excuse why it's suddenly okay to do it when they're the ones in power. In this case, social media power. And I don't know if these cancel campaigns perpetrated on X and maybe a little bit of YouTube gets anywhere. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a good precedent to set that. When you call them out on that shit, they cry that you're trying to cancel them or harass them or some variation off of one of those in generally a joking manner. Almost like they can pull just a prank, bro. Frankly, I've given up on figuring out the logic behind it. I'm trying to figure out if my next line is retarded and need to be reworded. What to fight, cry, argue with on it. Yeah, need to rewrite that. You can try in the comments, blah, blah, blah. Better yet, disagree. Yeah. But at the end of the day, who knows how that's gonna go and how at the end of the day, all this shit said. Quick stream, just sort of get back into the gist of things. Got any suggestions of what to look into? Put it down in the comments. There's a lot out there. I'm going to need to organize my thoughts, maybe even set up a discussion. I saw someone interested in discussing this idea on Discord privately. I'm not going to out that person. They might want to reconsider after this stream, but hell, I'm just getting over getting sick, so my voice is more fucked than normal, and same thing with my concentration. But sometimes you just need to jump back into things. With that said, I'm done for now. Peace out. Bye-bye.